on panels where we bring together a collective of experts in their various fields to get them to talk about a particular topic, which hopefully is of interest and engaging to any of our listeners, watchers, viewers, whatever the word is. We're waiting for one more. We're not quite sure where she is, so she may pop on the call a little bit later. If not, you've just got two rather than three panelists today, but I'm sure they will excel in the absence of a third one. So before we kick off, if we just sort of go around the room, just to learn who we've got on the call today. So Jackie, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Jackie Sherman, the consultant's consultant. What does that mean is I work with consultants who have come out of employment and setting up their own business. I'm also the chair of the Green Business Network, which is a not-for-profit organisation dedicated to helping people to get their businesses, particularly to get their green strategy in order. That's me.
Fair enough. And Kevin, with your nice Halloween background.
Oh, well, I like to make an effort, Bob. Yeah, Kevin Robinson from Your Copywriter and also a couple of other brands as well. But essentially, what we do here is we do messaging and usually in the form of blogs, copy, website copy, and so on. And we work with SMEs and we kind of play well with others sometimes in other marketing companies and website designers and things like that and collaborative. So yeah, that's what we do.
Fair enough. And what do you mean I did make the effort? Doesn't my office look like a dungeon? So yeah, the topic for discussion today is around vision, mission and values, and be interested to explore this one to see whether the guys on the call think these are relevant to small businesses or not. Certainly I've got some views on it, so we might as well start with the overall the overarching sort of like question then, and I'll come to you first, Jackie. Do you think that in a small business content, having a vision, mission and or value statements are worth it, are important?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Let's end the broadcast.
That's the short answer. Yes, I think it is. I mean, vision gives you where you're heading to. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you want to get to. How do you know how to get there? Which route to take. And that vision. So vision also inspires you and inspires others to want to work with you. How are you going to change the world or your part of the world or your customers' world in the longer term? So, and then your mission keeps you online. It's what you actually do. So it keeps you in focus and not getting distracted into other things. And your values are the things which are important for you to uphold as you go down that road. I made a note sort of thinking, if one of your values is collaboration, then you're not going to mess up your relationships just to make a quick buck. That's the way I put it.
No, that makes sense.
That's why it's important.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you have these written down and have really thought about them, every decision you make sure it's heading towards your vision, it's doing it the way you set up in business to do it, and you're holding true to what's important to you.
Yeah, I can get that. Kevin, what are your views? Do you think they're important, or do you have a different stance on it?
I mean, it's easy to be cynical, I think, about the idea, particularly for small business, about the idea of things like values and missions. And I'll be honest, the one I'm not a fan of is mission statements particularly when they get up to the corporate level. They can be, the one I particularly like is when you see striving for excellence. I always think, well, see if you can actually hit it for once for my order, please, mate. It just that kind of always looking to do better. Why? How bad are you normally? So there is a kind of a thing, I think, sometimes with these where they do, like all these anything like this, sometimes go a little bit over the top and a little bit silly. But what Jackie said about knowing where you're going to go. You need to know who you are and what you want to know where you go. And I think for me, the really important one is the value statements, the who you are and what you believe in and what your therefore is reflected into your business. That's the one I think is most important, because I think that for small business in particular is most important, because that really is an extension of the values of the people within the business. And that old chestnut about people doing business with people rather than businesses doing business with businesses is really important, I think, at the SME level. So as the quick buck that Jackie just talked about doesn't happen if you return to your values. You don't steal another person's customers. You become trustworthy, and it becomes part of your business. So the honor side of it, I think, is very important, and your values should support that.
Yeah, I think building on what you said there, I mean, because I guess my experience, going through the corporate world, I guess a lot of small business owners have done that, and would have had experience of the sort of corporate vision and missions. And certainly, if I look in my background, most of the vision and missions were sort of like just a poster on the wall and pretty meaningless to the day-to-day running of the business, or was something that was just developed who knows where, either by an external agency or a management team or whatever, without any consultation or thought of the staff that work for the company.
Somebody like me in marketing.
That's somebody like you in marketing, Kevin. Yes, exactly that. So I think that for a small business, if you're going to go through the exercise, it's not just one to come up with something that you think is going to be fancy from a customer perspective. It's got to be based in reality, I guess, and what how your business is, so that can be the foundations for it, rather than just an exercise to give you some nice words to stick on the website.
It's with all these, isn't it? It's living it. If you're a small business, it's in some ways it's easier, because it's just your values and your personal values, your personal vision. When you get to the experience you've had, we've all had, Kevin, of sort of corporate values, they've always been, there's somebody else's values. What's important for a small business is your own, isn't it? And that's what differentiates you from other people. We've all got other people we know from our networking who offer superficially the same service as us, but they won't do it with the same values, the same ethos. And that's really what you're trying to get to here, isn't it? What's special about you?
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, I just said yes, it is. I mean, and it's what you are. But the problem there is that from the customer's point of view, from the next person in the chain, from you creating those values, is it's easy to create them. It's easy to write them down. It's easy to come up with, and the latest thing is 3-word. Is something / something / 3-word kind of statements. Because I'm thinking of having one that just says "trite bloody saying" as my 3 words, and that is the problem. They can be trite. They can be a marketing tool, not a genuine thing that you've done for yourself, which I think is a big danger. It's easy to go out into the marketplace and say, we're underpinned by the honesty and the transparency that we show to our customers. But if you're not, if you're not underpinned by that, and we all know people who aren't, who are the opposite of what their mission statements and their values and their displayed customer charter says and all this sort of stuff, there is a time lag between that being found out, and I think that causes for the customers to find out that those people aren't genuine about those things, and I think that causes a lot of cynicism about mission values and about mission statements and about company values in general in clients. And Jack is 100% right. You have to live it. If all they are to you is a marketing ploy, then you may as well have not bothered.
Yeah.
You may as well not bother.
You've got to live it. You've got to.
Yeah.
Because what should happen in the ideal world is that everything you do, you can relate back to these three areas. So when people are giving you a testimonial, if honesty is one of your really strong values, which I hope it is for most businesses, is but that should come out in there, you know, and then people saying, giving an example, you know, of that reflects your values, isn't it?
But I mean, nobody's going to sit down at the beginning of the year, and I did ours at the beginning of the year, me and Bella and the girl that was working for us at the time. We sat down and did ours, you know, and I'm sure every company does. And I doubt there's a company out there that genuinely sits down in front of the whiteboard and writes up, we will do whatever, you know, anybody wants us to do if they throw cash on the table as one of their mission values, you know. But we all know there are companies out there that will do that, that, you know, that don't have that honesty. So they are, the value of them, I think is relative to the people creating them, if that makes sense. Do you see what I mean? And I think it's really important that you are living them, that you are doing them, and that you're prepared sometimes to make a hard choice to support your values. You know, whether that's turning business away or whether that's, you know, being brutally honest with somebody sometimes. You don't support something.
Yeah, I gave an example, but wrote down an example of that exact conflicts, which some people have. I mean, if the environment, which it is for me, is one of your strong values, you know, sustainability, then you have to be not willing to buy from blatant polluters just because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tells you it's cheaper. I mean, in the long term, it's probably not, but you know, you have to. So you if you're doing this properly, you use those statements to underpin your decisions. I mean, I do. I have my, especially with the Green Business Network, because it's not just me, but it's a group of us. You all got to be on that page, you know. So when we're making decisions, we revert back to, well, you know, what have we said in our mission statement? What are we trying to achieve? Are we actually heading in the right direction? You use them as your platforms to make decisions.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you're saying there about, you know, the green agenda, and if you are, if you have a green agenda, is biting the bullet and saying no. You know, it might be cheaper to use somebody who is using a less ecologically friendly product, or is you know, known for polluting their local environments and all that sort of stuff. You have to be able to stand by it, though, don't you? You have to be able to say that, otherwise you wasted your time in the first place. You know, we won't deal with anybody or anything who is not upholding human rights and human, you know, potential and all that sort of stuff. So I find, for instance, I won't deal with, no matter who it is, anybody who wanted to buy from us from a country where, for instance, there's a massive slave labor problem. No matter how much money they throw on the table, I'm like, while you're working and living in a place that is supporting that kind of world, I can't deal with that, you know, and that's my choice, and probably damages me more than they care. But that isn't what this is about, is it? That's not what your values are about, not what your company values are about. It's the line in the sand that you will not cross, and that you hope customers will agree with you and see those same values and then therefore give you money, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but back to what both you guys touched on. Obviously, if you're a one-person band and you want to go through the exercise, then it is just you and you know, you being held accountable to your own vision, missions, and values, and how you implement those. But obviously, if you're a bigger business and you've got staff, and I think you touched on it, Kevin, with your team at the time, you involved them in that project. And I think for me, that's important, because, you know, with these things, and as again we touched on earlier, sometimes these things, particularly in a bigger organizations, are not disseminated through the organization, so there's not a correlation between, you know, your frontline telesales in terms of how they're being and the corporate back office vision and mission about customer service or whatever it might be. So so from that point of view, I think it's important to probably engage as many potential stakeholders in that journey, just to make sure that you're aligned, or B, make sure once you've determined what those, you know, statements are, that they then are communicated. Would you guys agree with that? Do you think it is an exercise that needs to be done more widely than just in the boardroom or with the management team?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can do it in the boardroom. I don't see how, in larger companies. And okay, you got to be sensible here. I think, if you're a 50-person engineering company on the back streets of Rochdale, with providing your mission value statements there, you have to accept, if you've got a large group of people working for you, that some of them are not going to engage. Some of them are not going to be bothered. They're not going to be interested. I don't know why I picked on Rochdale there. I just did nothing. No offense to the people of Rochdale.
It's your northern roots, Kevin.
Well, it is. But I've been to Rochdale, and you can't offend them.
There you go. Then you see.
I was going to say most.
But if you as a board in your company with your 50 people, some of which are engaged, but if you consistently live your values in the business, in how you interact with those people, it will seep through. And it will attract the right sort of people as well. Because it's when it comes to staff or people, it's what people say about you when you're not there that counts, isn't it?
Mm.
So if you have these as your benchmarks, that your every conversation you have with your staff is underpinned by your values that you've already stated that you're going to run your company by, then people will buy into that. It's about that authenticity and that integrity, isn't it, behind the words? Otherwise, as you said, Kevin, it's just trite, pulled out the nicest motherhood and apple pie words you could find in the dictionary or the thesaurus and plonk them down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and all you've done is spent a morning producing, 8 lines of bullshit for you to put on your website, haven't you? And that's really what all you've produced at that stage.
But I think I don't know about you, but when I look at websites, you can usually pick them out, can't you? Because it's all too generic and vague,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it is a potential marketing tool, as well as, again, we've sort of alluded to that. We're all in a competitive world. There's very few companies that are the only provider or alternative in terms of what they do. There's usually somebody out there that is chomping at your heels as a competitor. And I think sometimes, just having those statements in the public domain, rather than just like an internal exercise or a poster on the wall in your company, I think that can help attract people with similar values, or people that can align behind what your vision is and can understand the mission statements that you've made. So I think from that point of view, I think if people are still reluctant to consider this as a valuable exercise, not only can it help you make decisions in other areas of your business once you're clear what the foundations are, it can also help distinguish yourself from the competition. What would you say about that?
I mean, yes, of course, it could help distinguish you from the competition if you are, and if you're genuine and you follow that thing through. Of course, it will appeal to your specific customers. But there is I guess I'm not, without sounding cynical about these kind of things, because I'm really not. I think they're they're a really useful tool. There is a problem with what you're saying there about using it to differentiate yourselves from other customers, in that some companies become over reliant on how much value their customers place in their mission statements and their and their backstories and their big whys and all that sort of stuff. And I've been put a couple up recently that made me no friends. And I put a post on LinkedIn that said nobody cares about your why. And this is part of it, isn't it? It's often quite part of the mission statement these days, and the values is, why are we here? Why are we in business? Why are we doing this? And that's all really well and good, but your customer's first priority is actually, do you provide the paracetamol that cures my headache? So there's the values in the mission statements in terms of the relations with customers are actually quite a long way down the list, usually, for the customer. And it's not that they're not important because of that. It's just that you do see some people over relying on it and pushing that too far up to the fore of their approach to the marketplace. before they've actually said what they do for a living. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got a good example of because Jackie helped me establish what my why was in business when I did a workshop with her many moons ago. She's probably forgotten that I
No,
did
I
it.
remember it well.
But you know,
I still quote you, Paul. So
yeah, I didn't
Yes.
really know what my driving force was in terms of the way that I work with people until Jackie took me through the exercise, which I think at the time was it called your ECC, your emotionally
Yes,
charged
yes.
connection to your business, which was an incentive and B&I thing. And so I use that now. The won't bore people with the whole details, but it was around connection with family. And interesting, I had a random person approach me through a platform called Enterprise Nation because I'm part of the Help to Grow program. I'm a mentor on that, and so you know you put your profile on Enterprise Nation. If anybody wants a mentor, you know they can find you and read your profile. And one of the fundamental reasons that this 22 million turnover company with 150 staff contacted me was because of those values around family and supporting family-run businesses, and you know having experienced what it's like as a family when I was younger for a business to fail. So it's interesting that person, because he was in the retail sector, they're in Northern Ireland, you know, all the things they wanted help with, various things that I didn't actually have skills in, yet he still wanted a conversation with me based on that fundamental value, if you like, let's call it family, or for want of a better thing. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's part of the whole process, because when I went back to him, I sort of said, you know, if you pick the right person, I don't have any experience in this. I don't know about the aspects that you're looking for. And he said, no, I'd still like a conversation with you. And that, you know, that conversation went quite well. I think I can support them or him in as an individual. But it is interesting, isn't it? And you know, unless I'd done Jackie's workshop all those years ago, I wouldn't have had that available to me as part of my, you know, part of my positioning, part of my marketing. And you know, my story is, the whole point of the ECC is it is unique to an individual, so you know there's no one going to have the same story as me. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
first time that I've experienced that directly, that someone has considered that aspect of my marketing, if you like, to choose me. So it's funny, isn't it, how it all works.
But telling your story, Paul, or any of us telling our story, is more than just saying, which is the other side of it, of people say, oh, I'm passionate about my business, and just keep telling you they're passionate about their business. And I think, so what? You know, nice to know, but so what? You know, but if they give some detail about what it is that they're actually emotionally attached to, you know, that really gives them the buzz and why they chose to do that particular type of business, and related that to them, then I'm interested, you know, because I think also it's where it's very difficult to be inauthentic when you're telling your story. You catch yourself out. So, and I think if people are sharing values with you, I think we're quite good at picking out, as humans, finding the cheats when they're when they're trying to live out some of this. You know, we notice it very quickly if somebody's not living up to values that we hold very dear.
Yeah,
You know, so it's quite a good way of picking out the cheats, is actually to know your own values. And if someone else says they have those values but don't live them, then you're probably the first one who's going to notice.
Yeah, don't get kept on the authenticity thing. We'll be here till lunchtime. I think the other thing as well is, and this was in one of the books that I read somewhere, which was part of the book club that I'm part of, book club I'm part of, that Mari Richardson runs, and that they were talking about, you know, one of the things was about values inside of a business, and you know, trying to stay away from the ones that everybody picks: passionate, honesty, integrity, all those things that sort of now are almost like a given. It's like, you know, what take it to the next layer down, you know, and you know, peel the layers off the onion, see if there's something more core or more foundational than what you're saying as a top level thing that a lot of other people are saying. And also to test it is, rather than look at how the values show up in your business, look at how they don't show up. So you touched on it a little bit, Jackie. You know, if you say that, you know, you're a green organisation, yet you're buying detergent in that's got all these, you know, horrible chemicals in it, then, you know, you're probably not in line with some of your core values. And I think sometimes looking at how the values don't show up in your organisation, that is a way to indicate, you know, A, have you chosen the right values, or are you missing something in that? So do you think there are sort of values that are overused nowadays and really don't help?
Yes. I mean, passionate is one of them. That's one of the ones that proper annoys me. You know, there is a thing here about whether those values are, like you said, whether they're actually paying lip service to the whole thing in you know, by using those trite, easy words. When we did ours at the beginning of the year, I backed off and let Bella and Nikki, who was working for me at the time, do 5 words. You know, so put 5 things up there that you think represent what this company does. You know, what the values of this company are, and what you think how we are seen by people. And 3 of those 5 words weren't on my list, which was quite interesting.
Are they on your list now?
They are now. But I immediately put them on, because the other strange thing was that they both came up with those words. You know, the 3 that weren't on there were consistent to both of the 2 people who were things. So clearly, the danger there, I think, for me, was if you are a sole trader or a very small business with one dominant personality running the whole thing, you know, the danger is that without reflection of others and without interacting with others, you fall into the mindset trap of, I must be right. I'm in charge. I'm a perfect. I must do everything. So you just trot out what you want to be, not what you are. You know, you start to create a hall of mirrors of your own narratives, where all you produce is something that you wish you were, rather than what you actually are to people. So it's a really valuable exercise to have somebody outside. And I think if I was passing something on with, well, we're coming up to 10 years of doing this now, you know, of being as a small business, I would say, when you're writing those values, when you are putting those together, get somebody else in, get a second voice.
Yeah, I've certainly done that for companies, and also excluded the managing director from the meeting.
That made you popular.
Come in later. Do it with the staff first, and then bring the boss in to hear what the people have said.
Yeah. No, well, Kevin, you know, you were one of the people that helped me when I went through the rebranding exercise 2.5 years ago, whenever it was now. And I think that's the first time that really, you know, I started to look at those areas of my business. Just obviously, when you're going through a rebrand, first of all, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater as you're moving forward. So you know, there needs to be some transition period between one brand and another. But what was quite interesting, and you've just touched on it, you know, I think you came back to me and asked me to sort of come up with the 3 words or whatever it was. So then because it was just me, and I thought, well, okay, I'll come up with something. But, you know, being the dictator, it might be the wrong values that don't really equate to how my customers experience my business. So what was a useful exercise for me, and this might be useful for people if they're going through it and they are just a 1-person band at the time, is just go to your customer base or go to other people that, you know, are involved in your business, and just ask them for 3 words that encapsulate you know, how they see your business. And that was a really useful exercise, because out of that you could see, whilst they, you know, obviously they all come up with exactly the same 3 words, that would have been spooky, but that, you know, there was a lot of overlap and a lot of and what's the word I'm looking for? Similarity between the words that they were coming up with, that from that group of about, I don't know, 8 or 9 people, and what I'd put into it as well, you know, that really helped define, okay, this is this is how the values are actually coming across. So rather than sort of make something up or try and work out what it is, by going to your customer base, you actually get an indication of how they're seeing those values show on a day-to-day basis when you haven't really thought about it or done the exercise in the first place.
Yeah, I think there's a real danger in this as well, in not doing that, in not getting the outside advice. And there is, well, you know, we were talking about it at lunch yesterday, Paul. I find, and again, I think I posted about it on LinkedIn recently as well, that I find this idea that you should ignore any advice of others or any input from others really strange and difficult to deal with, because how do you know? If it's just, you know what I mean? If it's just you, if you'd just gone ahead and done your rebrand in what you decided your rebrand should be, it's such a false premise to move forward on. Because while I'm in total belief, and anybody I think who knows me will agree that I'm self-confident to the point of ridiculous arrogance at times anyway, mainly just to be annoying. But
and I'm glad we've got that recording.
We all know that, yeah. It's totally an act. I'm far more arrogant than that, really. But you know, if you don't accept the viewpoint of others, you know, if you don't accept feedback from other people, you're in a really dangerous position. You're in a really, really dangerous position, because you will go forward with something that is potentially damaging. You go forward with something that's potentially, you know, the wrong line. And your values and your you know, your mission statements and all the ethos of your business, it's all well and good, but if you go off that and don't recognize you've gone off that because you have no sounding board, you've got nobody coming back to you like we did with your brand, Paul, although you weren't off it at the time, but you know, that, how would you know? How do you ever know if you're so self-absorbed in this, you know, if you're so determining yourself? And that's where somebody like Jackie comes in, or I think you come in, Paul, as a coach or something, is to be a break, isn't it? You know, to reinforce those values, I guess, to make sure you're staying in them.
Yeah, I think, you know, and again, it's one of these things, you know, like developing a business plan once and never revisiting it or never looking at it because you've just done the exercise, you know, is a futile one. And it's the same with this. You know, you need to make sure that if you're going to do this exercise, you don't have to. There's not a rule that says you definitely have to do this as a small business. I'm sure there's very successful small businesses and other businesses out there that don't have these stated anywhere. But I personally, as it sounds like all you guys do, think is something that is a great foundation to build a business on. And I lost my thread of what I was going to say now. That's a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
You were talking about how good your memory was.
I'm sure it was going to be some profound statement which is totally out of my head. I should write this shit down, shouldn't I, really?
Yeah. But Jackie, you must find this. Sorry, Paul, while you're having your
go on.
Yeah. You must find this, people who transition out of the corporate life, because that's really an area you deal with a lot, isn't it? People who transition out of corporate and into consultancy. Quite often, I think, have a very rose-tinted view of what it's going to be like to be a small business, you know, in the real world, and there is a bit of a tension, I think, sometimes a bit of a clash between what your internal values and how you want to approach the world is, and the reality of being a small business trying to get enough money through the door. You know, there is. So I think I guess I'm saying I understand a little bit sometimes where people's values do slip occasionally in the need of, you know, daily life, but there's a difference between flexibility and brittle, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? There's and coming out of corporate into the real world, small business world, I've had a couple of people talking to me about this recently. It's not quite what people expect, I think, a lot of the time.
No, it's huge. And I remember, and the reason I work with people on that is because of how difficult I found it. I came out of the health service and into the commercial world, the small business world. I was expecting a culture shock, but not quite the one I got. But I was amazed at how people earned a living, and also how hard people worked. Because everybody always thinks nurses and doctors work all the hours God sends, but most small business owners live and breathe their business. So But I found that if you help people, especially around the vision of getting a vision, because most people come out without one, with not explained, but it's in there somewhere. But getting that out and helping them see the reason why they're doing it, and having a reason why you're still working on Sunday afternoon when you should be out playing with your kids, is it helps to keep people motivated. It's, I think, particularly the vision statement is really important for when things get really tough.
But it can work in the opposite way, can't it, as well, Jackie? I mean, if people come out with too high expectations, those beliefs of what they're going to be, they're going to change the world with their business, and it's going to be, in a year's time, they're going to be
I don't
the go-to.
find that.
When that doesn't happen, do you not find that crushes people's expectations a little bit?
I don't find that people have that unrealistic expectations. I think people probably depends on how they've come out of corporate world. If it's sometimes their confidence has been squashed, and actually helping them to form a vision that's realistic, and
Exactly. It's that realistic bit that's important, isn't it?
I think that is where a coach or somebody with experience helping people to do that does help in what is realistic. But I find most people come into a small business have quite low expectations.
Yeah. I'd say the one that
the businesses that come to me.
But I think one of the things that quite often people say, and it always sets alarm bells off, is when people come out of corporate and say, I'm going to bring the international corporate blah, whatever it is they do, into the small business. And you think,
I know, and I
you're not, mate. You're just not. Because they don't have the money.
Yeah, I think that's a panel in itself, I think.
Yeah.
I think that
But you can't. What you can't do then, of course, saying about the realistic thing, what you can't do is let that inform then your values of, if you go out, if you say, if I came out of $4 million marketing companies and all that sort of stuff in corporate and said, I'm only going to work. My vision is I'm only going to work with people who are prepared to invest in the importance of high level video in their marketing. If you made that one of your values, that's going to hurt you because they won't have the money for that. You have to temper it, don't you? It has to be your values in some ways need to in a very real way need to reflect your marketplace as much as you need to reflect what the marketplace wants. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And whether you're bringing something new to the market as well, they may not, maybe you've come up with a way of making it affordable.
Yeah.
So back to my brief moment of senility. So what it was trying to.
It's too long. We're all bored with that. Nobody.
No, I'm going to make it now, just to let people know that I haven't totally lost the plot. So it was really just using an analogy to a business plan, not gathering dust. Your vision, mission statement shouldn't, and values shouldn't either. So it's like, just make sure that they're still real and relevant as your business evolves. And maybe they are, as with a brand and everything else and business plan, it may be worth a refresh or a revisit after a certain period of time, just to sort of like make sure that everything is in line and everything is consistent and things haven't changed too much. So now you know that I'm not totally senile. Before we wrap this up, are there any final points that you want to make on this topic? Jackie?
Can't think of anything.
Okay, let's not have to. That's fine. Kevin, anything for you?
Yeah, I think I do actually. I think a little bit of something to add for once at this. I normally stare into space in this bit and let somebody else do it, but I do have this time. What Jackie was saying there, and what we were saying about the realism and the realistic approach and understanding that the world isn't necessarily going to fall in with your values. It's likely to get harder in the next few months because we're going to go into some tough times. It's going to be tough out there. There's going to be a lot of temptation to do the things that we all say that we won't do. Whether it's about integrity or whether it becomes about you know, maintaining your supply channel or buying from the supply channel that is appropriate for your ethos or whatever. It's going to get tough and it's going to get challenging out there, but stick to those values. You know, I think you've got to ask yourself, in tough times, would you rather have the tough time or compromise who you are and your values to have it slightly less tough? You know, and if your answer is the former, then, you know, dig in and do that. Stick by them when things get hard and stick with who you are and what you do. That was it.
I'm going to have the last word because you reminded me of what I'd written down, is do the mirror test. Can you still look in the mirror and look yourself in the eye?
Yeah. Did I today? Did I? You know, there's a great thing. I talk about being a stoic by nature, and I'm sure Stephen Church can be somewhere his ears are burning now because he probably says this as well. But there's a you know, one of the base sayings of Stoic philosophy is, if this was your last hour on earth, how well did you spend it? You know, were you? Did you stick to your principles throughout that? And you're right, the mirror test is where that sits, isn't it? Can you look at it in the morning and say, yesterday, I maintained my values?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And if that slips, that's a lot of psychological pressure to deal with, isn't it, Jackie?
Okay. On that note, I'm just about to go and break all the mirrors in my house. So we'll end it there. Thanks for your time today.
Is that just by looking at them?
Anybody listening to this on a replay, if you want to put any comments wherever you are, we can get back to you if you haven't managed to sort of join us live. So we'll end it there.